Good morning and welcome to Our Stories. Our guest today is Kathy Beube. Kathy and I have been talking together, and she's going to share with us some incidents from her life, and particularly how she learned to gain her voice, which you'll hear more about as she tells her story. So, you told me that you were born in Pana and that there are still members of your extended family who live there. You lived there during your early years up until age 5. What was life like for you in Pana?
Well, I was born to Johnny and Elsie Pembroke, and we lived in Pana on First Street. And my father was, he worked at a factory, and my mom was a waitress, and I was the firstborn of 5 daughters, and I was very interested and curious about the world, as most children are. And I was always looking to do things. I was left-handed, so I lived in a left-handed world like no one in the family, and I found a way to work around that as early as possible. And I remember the most special times, like my father taking me to fly my first kite. We went fishing. Then my sister was born at age 3, so the first one, and then it took a little turn for me because I was the first granddaughter. I was the first one, and everybody just, you had the world at your feet. And my mom and dad realized, well, they tell a story, they've told it many times, that I was a toddler sitting in the high chair, and Mom and Dad were having a little fight, a little argument, and all of a sudden, I said to both of them a full sentence that they had never even heard, and it was, "You shouldn't talk like that. You shouldn't say things like that." That's how they said it. So they looked at each other, it stopped everything. And they're like, "She's a prophet. She's got something to tell the world." So, yeah. And then I rode my bicycle. I woke up one morning and my dad had tried to teach me to ride it. And I said, I had a dream. I could ride my bike and I'm going to do it all by myself. And so I did. I took off. And those are the little things that I remember best and I enjoyed.
And when you were 5, your family moved to Little Rock. How did that come about?
Well, my father was looking for better work. And I had an uncle, his brother, who lived there in Maplevale. And he invited us to come down. Mom and Dad needed a fresh start. At this point, there were 3 daughters. And so in 1963, 63, in the fall of 63, summer of 63, we went down and stayed with them, my uncle, until we could find a place of our own. So we rented a home in Little Rock, in not such a good area, but we had a home there in Little Rock, Arkansas. And
how different was your life in Little Rock compared to your early years in Pana?
First of all, the heat and humidity was excruciating. I can always remember that. And I remember the accents. My aunt and uncle, my aunt just had such a southern slang, and I just loved her. But the difference from living in Pana was that when we first moved there, I saw black people for the first time. I saw African Americans, and I thought, on TV you would see only certain shows with white people, and all of the things about life with a different race, a different culture. In our neighborhood, we had a mixture. But there was a dividing line as to who you could play with, where you could go. The sounds of, there was a restaurant bar just a block from our home, and it was owned by a black family, and we were never allowed to go there. They would play loud music, and one song that always stood out for me was "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." I think that was a James Brown. And I thought, why are they saying this? And they just played it again and again and again. So another thing that I remember was riding the city bus. We did not have a car for a while. And I learned that the white people sat in the front and our black friends would sit in the back. And I never thought, it never sat well with me. I didn't understand it. I didn't get to ask questions about it. But I overheard conversations with the N-word with many people. So there was an uneasiness for me living down there. It was,
Well, in those years you were there, 1963 to 70, there was a lot of uneasiness in that community.
yes, there was. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. President Kennedy, my mom, I remember that very well in '63 when John F. Kennedy was assassinated and how that was televised and very sad times. Yes, there was a lot of unrest, but there were a couple of little girls that I was allowed to play with outdoors, and my sisters and I would play with these young black girls, and I got to know them better and realized that it's not just me, it's the we. I mean, these are human beings.
Yeah.
And I made a good friend at school who stood up for me because I was bullied, and she was a black girl. And I thought, you know what? I don't care what they're saying. Something about this is just, I just had a voice driving me to say something, and I couldn't at the time.
Yeah. Well, you said your parents always treated everyone the same, regardless of color, and that was, their outlook, but probably not the outlook of other white people in Little Rock.
No, it wasn't. I think it helped that we were from Illinois. My father had family in Decatur, Illinois, and so he was aware of it.
Did you fit in at school? Did you feel like you did?
I didn't feel that I fitted in down there until I met this young black girl on the playground. And I decided to play tetherball with her, line up. Everybody lined up to play this young girl. And I wanted to play, and I was determined, just as a bicycle ride, to win the game, and I did. And I thought, well, I don't know how she's going to respond to this, but I won. And she ended up becoming a dear, dear friend after that. She had seen me be bullied, and she stood up for me.
Well, that was good. Then when you were 15, your family moved to Decatur, and during that time, your parents, continued to model for you to treat everyone the same.
Okay.
What about in terms of kind of how you handle things? Were they modeling that you should do what you needed to do to get along, or were they encouraging you to speak out if you saw something you thought wasn't right? Where were they coming from?
When we moved here, it was actually in 1970 we moved back. And life was, I was in Decatur, so I felt comfortable with that. But going to school, starting in 7th grade here, after living down there, my accent, I had this accent. And I was just, everybody just thought that was cute, and they giggled and they teased, and I just thought I'm going to get rid of that accent as soon as possible, which I did. And I shouldn't have, but I did. And it was inevitable because been here forever now. So, but I didn't feel comfortable. There was some trauma in my life in the early 70s. And that trauma made me lose my voice for a bit. And I held on to it until I was 16. My grandmother had always been my model for faith all my life. She would write me letters of encouragement when she could, and I would write back. And I always knew that God was there. There was a song that I had learned early on about Jesus loves all the little children, red and yellow, black and white. And those kind of songs, music has always helped me through a lot to get my voice back. But going to church at age 16, I turned my life around. I realized that the trauma that I had been exposed to was not going to define who I am, that I was loved unconditionally, and that I could use my voice now to help others who had been through injustices.
Okay. Well, certainly here at First Pres, you aren't known as Miss Shy-Fly. You're someone who speaks up and out about doing what we should do and speaking up about any inhumane behavior that you see. So how did you come to be the person who speaks out, speaks up?
A lot of it is through experiences, being, working with young families at Baby Talk for years, inner city teen moms, I worked with them. Of domestic abuse, I have witnessed domestic abuse before, and I know that people need a voice, they need courage, they need people to lift them. And so I wanted to just be that person that they could come to. Coming to this church really helped me to understand that all these years that I've wanted to get my voice, to keep my voice going, even through raising a family and taking a step back. Once I joined the church 14 years ago, I was welcomed, and I realized that everyone has a place at the table. No matter what your religious beliefs are, you are welcome, and you can ask questions. God welcomes all questions. And the pastor, Jim Montgomery, told me that he made me feel very welcome. The whole church did. And they embraced me, and they said, use your talents to serve God wherever you want. We have every opportunity to share your voice, to share your artistic abilities. And I realize that there are times whenever you need a balance of when you can speak out and when you need to just be a good listener, just to be a good listener to those. And I have definitely encouraged my grandchildren to serve and to be aware of the injustices. They've come to services with me when we had prayer vigils for mass shootings. They've helped do displays at Central Park. I want my legacy with my family, with my children, my grandchildren. I want them to know that no matter what you go through in life, you need to know that there is hope and that no one can take away your voice.
Well, that leads right into my next question was, have you set goals for yourself in terms of what you want to focus your efforts on and try to make an impact on any particular issues? So,
I think racial injustices have always stood out for me. I've been in the Peace March here in Decatur and working with the inner city families. I've enjoyed doing that. Working at Good Sam and with the homeless means a lot to me.
Are there any particular methods that you found of keeping yourself strong in your commitment to be a megaphone for justice? I
love to write poetry. I've shared my story with the church in the past. I love to paint.
Doing those things
helps
kind
me.
of
Yeah.
Keep your
going
energy up.
And yes, and music and books, and I love reading about the stories of people's struggles and how they've come through, and it inspires me to read those. And I have a strong faith that anything can happen. God is by our side. So.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.
One of, I think, really some really important points for all of us there that you've made.
And I thank you for all of these stories. I thoroughly have listened to all of them, and I enjoy hearing other people share their voice, and it just it gives me real comfort in knowing my church family better in that way. I've learned a great deal. Thank you.
It's been a joy to do it.